There's really 4 different completely distinct Russian interventions in 2016. So there was the online social media campaign. This was mostly conducted by private groups like the Internet Research Agency that belonged to one or more oligarchs who are well aligned with Putin. That was mostly conducted on the social media companies completely without any kind of offensive cybersecurity component. And was much more diffuse, so it started well before the election. It was much more about driving wedges between people on both sides. So actually, a big chunk of it is like fake Black Lives Matter groups, right? Was actually was the largest single component of like political groups that the Russians are pretending to be were fake Black Lives Matter groups, right? So they're trying to find real issues in American society and then make it as hard as possible for people to have reasonable discussions about them. So you create a Black Lives Matter group, you create a pro-police group, both of them in Baltimore, you advertise inside of the inner city for the Black Lives Matter group, you advertise in the suburbs for their pro-police, and then you get them to reference each other. And it's the same people in the same floor in St. Petersburg pretending to be these totally different groups. And the goal is to pull Americans behind them to get tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Americans to then spread the content and to fight amongst one another and then sit back and watch. So that's the first one. The second is the GRU campaign. So GRU is the main intelligence directorate of the Russian military. These are intelligence professionals, much more professional than the IRA. And I mean the Internet Research Agency, like there's actually gray here. I don't have to define that in my classes that I teach because nobody knows about the Irish Republican Army. But for you folks, I meant the Internet Research Agency. So GRU is much more professional. This was GRU broke into John Podesta's email, broke into Colin Powell's email, broke into the servers of the Democratic National Committee. They have real offensive cybersecurity capability. They took tens of thousands of stolen documents. They looked at these documents and they said, what is the worst possible thing we can do to hurt Hillary Clinton? And they decided the worst thing we can do is try to convince Bernie voters that everything was stolen from her. So then they selectively leaked that information to journalists wrapped around, they didn't leak all of it. They selectively leaked the stuff that supported these ideas, and they were able to change the entire narrative. The victim of that was not social media, it was the mainstream media. It was the New York Times, it was the Washington Post, it was CNN, MSNBC, who went 24/7 on all of the Hillary email coverage and the like. The third was the direct attacks against election infrastructure. This is what we know the least about in the non-classified side. This is why we really needed a 9/11 commission with the ability to get clear data, because the US government has been very, very sketchy about sharing what they know about direct attacks against election infrastructure. A bunch of what we know, we only know because a woman named Reality Winner took a bunch of documents out of the NSA, hid them in her clothes and snuck them out. She's in federal prison for that, but that's why we know some of the stuff we know now about those attacks. And then the fourth is the kind of overt campaign, RT, Sputnik, and the like. Apparently there's lots of people that don't understand the R in RT is Russia, or they don't care. And that's like, actually, of all of this stuff, that's the most depressing to me, is that even if people know this content is like coming from the Russian government, as long as it corresponds with their prior beliefs, they're happy to reshare it. And so we try to address all 4 of those classes of issues. My number one recommendation in here is when advertising absolutely is a problem. It's not a problem in some of the issues you brought up, but in the US election it is. Advertising is the most dangerous part of the social media platforms because it gives you the most amplification possibility. You trade money for amplification. It also allows you to put content in front of people who didn't ask to see it. So it has the least kind of free expression concern. If somebody joins a private anti-vax group on Facebook, they have said, I want to consume anti-vax material. There's a real free expression concern about then saying, no, that's not good for you, right? But allowing people to put their stuff in front of others is not like a freedom that we really give.